In this video, I will tell you a little bit about learning culture and give some tips on how to get started with developing a great learning culture that supports your employees and the business. My name is Daniel Mills and I work as a Senior Learning Technology Consultant at Valamis. I have over 20 years of experience in the learning and development field, and I help organisations move away from the traditional classroom-based development methods to online learning solutions by using technology as the enabler for learning. Culture is everything you see, hear and feel within an organisation. In my conversations with heads of L&D and business leaders, I often hear the terms work culture and learning culture used interchangeably, because surely one drives the other, right? But what does learning culture really mean? The CEB defines a learning culture as a culture that supports an open mindset, an independent quest for knowledge and shared learning, directed toward the mission and goals of the organisation. So why is learning culture important? First, it promotes inclusivity and an environment which encourages growth and openness. And second, at its best, it can support learning and career motivation. All organisations should strategically build and nurture their learning culture to ensure that the organisation remains competitive and agile throughout both the good and the difficult times. Learning culture is not only HR's responsibility, but it should flow through all departments and operations within an organisation. For example, performance management, individual career development, succession planning, and of course surround this with lots and lots of communication. It's good to keep in mind that learning culture is not just courses and formal learning, but it is the atmosphere which surrounds that learning. It includes the permission to learn, the permission to fail, and the permission to learn from mistakes. Learning culture is where everyone from managers to trainees can and should give input and can benefit from that input. What is a good learning culture like, and how can it actually be enjoyed? Let me give you some examples. In Daniel Pink's book, Drive, a good learning culture creates a sense of autonomy, mastery, and purpose for individuals. It motivates and mirrors their performance of an entire organisation. When you are motivated in your role, your work is likely to be more enjoyable, and you will also be more likely to further develop your skills. Business transformation consultant at Future Learning organisation in Sweden, Johan Skogaloff, suggests that a strong learning culture encourages and rewards experimentation, gives employees influence over their work and learning, helps people see mistakes as learning opportunities, and encourages reflection. In other words, the culture supports an individual's growth mindset and protects the psychological safety within the organisation. Motivation alone is not enough in building a learning culture, but a sense of purpose is also needed. So be sure that your organisation has a purpose that can engage and create a desire for change and learning, and make sure that that purpose is inspiring and clear enough to every single individual. To me, this sounds a lot like good company culture. So I want you to think, is there really that big of a difference between a learning and a company culture? Next, I want to give you some tools and strategies that I recommend for developing a learning culture. The first step is to start with the organisational outcomes and then work backwards in terms of learning objectives and design. So here we are, back to the purpose. What is the point of it all, and why do we need to work, change and learn in an organisation? Second, analyse the current state of your learning culture. Learning culture needs to be approached from 3 different perspectives: individual, structure and environment. Think about these perspectives and decide if there is something that seems to be blocking learning in some of them. For example, when it comes to structure, is the learning platform easy to use, and is it frequently used by learners? Or when it comes to the environment, is it safe for employees to ask for help in order to learn something new? You can learn more about this SIE model in our Learning Culture Workbook. I'll put the link in the description. One more good question to ask here is, how does your organisation react to failure? Is it seen as an embarrassing event, or is it ever talked about? Answering these questions will tell you a lot about the current status of the psychological safety in your organisation, and if it is safe for employees to make mistakes. Could you do anything to make it safer? Another simple question to ask is, do people know that they're allowed to spend time learning? Research tells us that world-class organisations spend a lot of time in this area, measuring not only hours spent, but learning outcomes. Is your company world-class in this area? So one of the key aspects here is to make the employees feel that their learning is valued, and there are no shortcuts here. Good communication is needed. One very practical and obvious tool is to simply ask your employees, do you have time to learn? Do you think that our organisation supports your learning and career development enough? As an organisation, you will have to develop a clear communication plan for learning and maybe even offer rewards for helping or encouraging others to learn, just to emphasise how much you appreciate it. But remember, just like any culture, learning culture is the sum of the people who are part of it. Include your people in building the learning culture together. It's the only way you can build learning and support that can truly thrive. My colleagues at Valamis have created this great workbook about creating and supporting a learning culture. It has many practical tools that I have time to share on this video, and that can help you in building your learning culture. Go ahead, check it out. I also recommend a recording from a recent webinar I hosted together with Charles Jennings. The topic was how to successfully integrate learning with work, and it will offer you another approach to learning culture, both from an academic and practical perspective. That's it from me for now. Let me know in the comments if you're left with any questions about learning culture. I'd be more than happy to help. Many thanks.